Welcome back. It's been a long time coming, but welcome back to the Bottom Line Podcast with Ben and Willey. I'm your main man, Dorazio. It has been a minute, bro.
My God.
We were just talking about March Madness was
Yeah,
last.
I don't know. Well, I guess it was March. I was gonna say like early March, like right when the brackets got announced. We were in my dorm room inside of a dresser was where the mic was set up, and we were in two desk chairs and different setup this year, but a little bit of it.
Well, it's a lot has changed. We're now living together in our apartment. So I know last year was like new location every week. Hopefully, in theory, we finally have a set spot to do the show now.
Unless they kick us out of here.
Yeah, unless if for whatever reason we're not in this apartment for no reason. But it's football time. It's coming quick, and I'll tell you what, I'm excited. We watched the Colorado game last night at the time of recording this, and that was just a preview of all the football fun that is to come.
Yeah, and college kicks off tomorrow. I'm sure me and you will be sitting on the couch out there watching a little bit of college, and like you talked about the little bit of the preview so far with a little bit of college. We saw a little bit last week with the Georgia Tech Florida State game, which was an excellent game, and then preseason kind of gives you a little bit, but like I don't know about you, but it's just different. The second you wake up on that Sunday, I mean even Thursday and Friday now with the two early games, but the second there's no better feeling than when you wake up on Sunday morning and you just got the full slate. 1:00 games, 4:00 games. It's a good feeling to be a football fan and a sports fan overall.
No, I mean, it's brilliant. So we were thinking for today's show, we're going to do our, if you remember when we were back on the radio station, our first show, we did a kind of a season preview. So we're going to be giving our way too early rankings for all the divisions, our week one rankings. I think we're even going to do some award predictions as well. So all NFL today. I mean, that's kind of our bread and butter. So
a little bit of the same, a little bit of different, little bit of our own twist of it this year, but should be a good show.
So let's just jump right in, make sure this works and beautiful. So we're starting off with the AFC North with these beautifully designed slides.
What a good first division we chose here, because arguably the best division in football.
I mean, especially even historically, I mean, this division is just always a dogfight. So I mean, should we just go from 4 to 1? So I feel like the interesting storylines are going to be the top team. So go ahead. You obviously have the Steelers at number 4, which it's a really interesting story because what the Steelers did this offseason, I think, was probably the best they could have done given the cards they were dealt.
They had. Yeah.
Obviously, the big acquisitions was acquiring Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, both for pretty much relatively nothing.
Which is funny, too, because it's funny that a team's two biggest acquisitions in an offseason are from the same position, and only one of them can really play, at least more than likely. I mean, unless they're pulling out the 2-quarterback system like they do in college. But, yeah, the Steelers had a good offseason. I mean, I think everyone thought that this team kind of, you could saw last year they had no business being near the playoffs, and Mike Tomlin does it again, which is why it felt bad putting them in that spot. I felt weird making this list, and I really thought about doing the flip that you did, but I don't know, just something about those Browns just made me – it was more about my confidence in the Browns and not necessarily the Steelers. I still think the Steelers are probably going to win eight games this year.
You think the 500 streak –
probably stays another year. But yeah, I don't know. The Steelers team it still feels like it's missing a few pieces, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Now that the whole Brandon Ayuk thing fell out, this team still needs a receiver, in my opinion. I like George Pickens, and I like their 1-2 combo they have going with Warren and Najee. And
Fryer moves to solid tight end.
But ideally, the Steelers team's just not there yet.
Yeah, I have the Steelers at 3. Obviously, I have Cleveland at 4. But while we're talking to the Steelers, I think them in Cleveland, I mean, we're talking a game or two difference for me. I think
it's going to be close. Yeah.
I think they're just slightly better, and I have my doubts about Deshaun Watson at quarterback. And
I can't say I blame you.
And at least from what I know, it looks like we're not going to get a lot of Nick Chubb this year.
Yeah, they put him on the pup list, and they said that they had already planned this before the season started. So I really can't imagine he'll be back anytime soon.
It's just going to come down to, that Browns defense last year was lethal. I mean, absolutely insane. I have a hard time thinking they're going to replicate that success.
Yeah.
So that's why, again, though, I wouldn't be surprised if all 4 teams in the division finish above 500.
It's the best division in football. I think most people would say that. It's a tough division to rank, especially these teams all play well against each other too. It's not like even if the Steelers are having a down year, like they can still beat the Ravens any given Sunday.
Yeah, then jump into the top 2. So I have Bengals 2. You have Bengals 1.
Yeah.
My thing with it's more I just like the Ravens more, especially at the time of recording this. We don't know what's going on with Jamar Chase. If the Bengals have Jamar Chase, I mean, who knows what this team is? Yeah. I just really like the Ravens. I love the acquisition of Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was prime Derrick Henry, this would be even scarier.
Yeah.
But even Derrick Henry in his current state, I mean, that was always the thing with the Ravens. They love to run the football. They never had a true star running back.
one of the more obvious fits this offseason. It just felt like it was meant to be that Derrick Henry would end up a Raven, and they got it done. So,
and I just think with Derrick Henry now, they can just pound that rock more and more and more. I think Zay Flowers is going to continue to develop. Maybe if Mark Andrews, fingers crossed, can finally stay healthy for a full year.
He did practice today.
He did practice today. Glad he got in that car accident. Glad everything looks.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. That's why he's been missing practice. So I like the Ravens a lot. I think just their new running attack is going to propel them over. And just questions about Jamar Chase, and I don't know. I just like the Ravens slowly more, but I'm willing to hear you out.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the Bengals, for me, it's like we saw what this Bengals team was for about 2 years when they were healthy, and they were. They were in the Super Bowl, right? I mean, they were. This team was top of the top.
The only AFC team that really beat the Chiefs.
Yeah, this team was, the team that really had the best shot of beating the Chiefs. I know we can say what we want about the Bills, but the Bengals showed that they could do it. And this team now finally has Joe Burrow healthy, and Joe I think this is his first full training camp he's had. I mean, we haven't seen him even had a minor tweak or nothing. Joe's been healthy the whole training camp, and I know the Jamar Chase situation is what it is, and they lost some talent for sure. I mean, the loss of Joe Mixon will be missed this year.
I'll tell you what, we were talking about this though.
Yeah,
I mean, this might be a hot take. I almost like the running back room now this year more than it was with just Joe Mixon.
As a room, yes. I love what they did replacing him. I think Zach Moss was one of the most underappreciated guys in the league last year. He filled in for Jonathan Taylor exquisitely. I mean, almost better than I think the Colts could have imagined. And they brought in a rookie named Chase Brown who looks electric. He kind of showed some flashes in the preseason.
I think what's nice about them too is they complement each other's play styles perfectly. Zach Moss is your typical just grind power back, and Chase Brown's gonna be more of a pass catcher, explosive. Kind of reminds me almost Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. And they were both on Dallas.
I could see that.
Yeah, so I like what they did, but I'll cut you off.
It's okay. I mean, they just kind of kept the continuity there, still there. Lou Amarillo's still running that defense.
Yep.
I just think they kind of continued what they were doing. Yeah, they lost a few pieces, but they kind of recuperated them nicely. It just seems like when the Bengals are healthy, they're still one of the better teams in football. And not that the Ravens are bad necessarily, like we talked about. It was just more of I just like this Bengals team, and I do think the Ravens are going to win a lot of games this year. So
fair enough. So we'll go on to the AFC South, and again, I think most of our predictions down the line are pretty similar. We said a few here and there.
Flip-flops, yeah.
But this division, in my opinion, is the division I'm keeping my eye on the most this year, outside of the Eagles and the NFC East. But this is my favorite division to keep an eye on out of all the divisions in football, just because other than the Titans, I think we're both in agreement there are a distant fourth.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be shocked if the Colts came first. I wouldn't be shocked if the Jags came first. Obviously, I'm picking them. I wouldn't be shocked if the Texans came first. I mean, I think it's going to be a truly three-legged race to the finish. It wouldn't surprise me if we have three playoff teams looking in this division right now.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it last year. All three of those teams were kind of on the cusp of that playoffs, and I believe the only team that really ended up getting in was Houston. Mm-hmm. But Jacksonville and Indianapolis were in it the whole season. They were winning games. I mean, we saw what Shane Steichen did in Indianapolis last year, which was a borderline coach of the year-esque performance last year with how much they had to deal with as an organization. But I think the best way to start this is from the bottom, because for once we actually agree on the bottom too. So the Titans, as we talked about, I mean, I don't think there's much to cover there. And
I am excited to see what Will Levis can do with some proper weapons.
Second year in a system too.
He has Ridley and D-Hop. I mean, this might be one of the better fourth place teams. Maybe I don't know. It's just they're definitely the odd one out, but I still think they're gonna put some
games.
I mean, they acquired Tony Pollard. I mean, they made some moves. They acquired Calvin Ridley, Tony Pollard. I'm just curious to see if Will Levis is going to be their long-term guy quarterback. I feel like this is kind of a
prove-it year.
Yeah, for Will Levis. But that's pretty much all I really have on the Titans.
Yeah, the Titans, I mean, the big story for them is more about what they lost. I mean, you lost their franchise player, arguably the greatest Titan in the history of their franchise.
First-year head coach. Who they hired and replaced?
Bryce Callahan.
Yes.
Yeah, which is interesting, too, to the Will Levis development, because he was a guy that spent multiple years developing Joe Burrow and kind of, the one that got that Bengals offense on their feet. So
first time in a while where the Titans have like an offensive-oriented head coach, because they just had the guy from Belichick's system.
Vrabel,
yes, Mike Vrabel, who I'm surprised he didn't ever get another coaching job. That's another conversation. But they're kind of an offensive identity now. They were a defensive team for almost probably a decade.
Which is fine.
No, nothing. No shame in that. But just curious to see what the new direction is for the Titans under the new coaching.
And I think they need it. I just think they need a fresh blood. And like we talked about, there's no disrespect to that Vrabel era. I think that was a very successful era. I mean, there were multiple times where this Titans team was winning the division. They were getting deep playoff runs. It just never panned out. And now it's kind of new blood, new identity on offense. And they're kind of really embracing this youth that they're bringing in.
Then we have the three-headed monster, the Colts, Texans, and Jags in any order you want. So we'll go with the Colts. We both have them at third. I like the Colts. My thing with the Colts is I don't know if what we saw with AR-15 was a little fluke run or if it's sustainable, because what we saw in those 4 games was great. It was also only 4 games. We haven't seen what he could do over the course of an entire season.
Yeah.
And that just kind of has my head scratching a little bit. I mean, the potential's there of AR-15, but I just don't – I'm not fully committed to him yet. I'm really not.
Yeah, and we didn't really see much good things out of him in the preseason. We saw him come out in the preseason, and he was throwing a couple picks. The offense was kind of stalling a little bit, and it's like, yeah, like I see the potential is there. I mean, I think anyone sees the Colts in their schedule, and you're not glazing over it by any means, but it's just like, when you have 2 teams that are, my opinion, potential powerhouses in the Jags and the Texans, it's just hard for this Colts team to really fit in. But like we talked about, if Anthony Richardson gets going and, some of these young guys they have brought in with Michael Pittman and the running attack with a fully healthy Jonathan Taylor, which 2 years ago led the league in rushing, this team has all the makings. And they had a great draft class this year, bringing in Latu and Adonai Mitchell. And, I mean, this team has the writing to be a good team. I just don't know if they're there yet.
Yeah, and fair enough. I'll let you keep on rolling with the Jags and the Texans. What was the deciding factor, Texans over Jags? The Texans had a hell of an offseason.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but this was a coin flip for me. I really think these 2 teams are very even right now. And that's surprising, too, because I think the Texans, had arguably one of the better off seasons again. I mean, this is back-to-back off seasons where the Texans have just retooled and kind of.
Texans and the Bears, I think, had the 2 best off seasons.
Yeah, and they've done it almost 2 years in a row now, because the Bears had a good off season last year, too. Yep. But, I mean, this Texans team, kind of retooled. They brought in Stephon Diggs, who's, the first their true number 1 this Texans team has seen since DeAndre Hopkins left a few years ago.
Do you think he's the number 1? See, I'm still thinking Nico might be. I don't know.
Well, that's no disrespect to Nico, because, was he producing last year? And I think he's going to produce again. But
I mean, either way, it might be just a 1A, 1B, maybe even a 1C type thing. But you take out.
So you bring in Stephon Diggs, you bring in Joe Mixon, who we just talked about a few minutes ago, and continue to pile up on the offensive side of the ball. You added a couple of young pieces in the defensive side of the ball, and all of a sudden, a couple of these guys are continuing to develop. C.J. Stroud's going to probably be better than he was last year. We're going to see Derek Stingley and Will Anderson really start to come into their own. And this Texans team's no joke, but the Jags, I mean, you have them first for a reason. That team is no joke either.
I really like the Jags. I like what they did in their draft class, specifically Brian Thomas Jr. I think it's a very stud. He's being very slept on because people are talking about Neighbors. They're talking about Marv. And I think people
rightfully so.
They're definitely better than Brian Thomas.
But Brian Thomas can play too. Don't forget that.
He's an absolute dog. I don't know what it is about this Jags team that I like. I don't know if it's just the Faye 5 and Trevor Lawrence to finally
get over that hump.
But I like what they did in the offseason. They didn't really lose to many big pieces other than Calvin Ridley. But to be honest, Calvin Ridley just kind of was an outlier with the Jags last year.
Didn't feel right.
It was always kind of the Christian Kirk show. And now Christian Kirk can finally elevate to be that wide receiver 1 they pay him to be.
Yeah.
Evan Ingram had the most underrated season ever by tight end last year.
He's great.
Dude went off, and Travis Etienne. I mean, I just really like what the Jags did. And I like the Jags defense slightly more than the Texans. And that's kind of the deciding factor. That might be a bit of a hot take, but I like the Jags defense just a little bit more. I mean, Josh Allen's one of my favorite guys.
Yeah.
Dude's a dog.
And you kind of hope that maybe Trayvon Walker can continue to kind of step in. I mean, that guy was the number 1 pick a few years ago. So, I mean, maybe he takes another step into that defense. And, we know what this defense is capable of. It's just a matter of them getting it done. And Doug Peterson, that guy can coach football.
Yep. I mean, and like you said, I don't think the Jags are miles better than the Texans.
No.
Very close. I think that maybe the light might be too bright for the Texans. I mean, the expectations for them this year have skyrocketed. I don't know if they can live up to it. I don't know. I got a gut feeling the Jags are going to just be able to edge out the Texans. So there's the AFC South. We'll keep going with the AFC East. And look at that. Down the board in agreement.
I'll be honest. I didn't look at this before you started. I'm surprised you had my Dolphins there.
I was thinking about the Bills. I mean, let's just start there. I was thinking about the Bills, but when I was looking at the schedules, I mean, the Bills' schedule is just.
Well, they have the same schedule. So that besides 2 games.
But I think those 2 games are. I don't know. I thought the Bills had a slightly more challenging schedule as 2 games, and I mean, let's talk about the Bills offseason because that's kind of
the story. Well, them and the Jets are kind of the stories of this division. But
I mean, you lose Stephon Diggs, you lose Gabe Davis. I mean, who's the alpha male in this offense? I mean, you're asking for somebody to take a jump, whether that's Dalton Kincaid, whether that's Curtis Samuel, whether that's Keon Coleman, all guys who have great potential in this league. But I mean, we're talking you have to be the treatment you get as a wide receiver 1, tight end, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the prime factor that defense is looking to stop. That's why so many wide receiver 2s and wide receiver 3s can flourish in this league, because you don't have the top assignment. And I don't know what Josh Allen is going to be able to do without Diggs, without Gabe, without some of his top playmakers. I think James Cook is going to take a step up. And overall, I think
he's going to have to.
I think the Dolphins have way more playmakers across the field. I mean, we go all day. I mean, you could go better than me. Hill, Waddle, Mostert, right? Even Wright. I mean, they have so many playmakers, and I don't know. I just think the Bills last year kind of had those their last chance with their current unit. And I expect them to fall off this year. I think this is finally the year the Dolphins get over the hump and win the division.
Yeah, like you said, the Bills is kind of one of the craziest off seasons. I mean, it felt like every time we were looking on social media, refreshing our pages, the Bills were losing someone and not gaining someone. And that's never a good thing. I mean, you talked about it. Losing Stephon Diggs in itself is a massive hit, especially considering Josh Allen's almost his entirety of his pro career now has been with Stephon Diggs. And pretty much all of his successful seasons were not because of Stephon Diggs, but were with Stephon Diggs. I mean, that's been his go-to guy. I know they've had their, a little bit of rebuttals and there was some drama there, but I mean, to call a spade, those guys were one of the top wide receiver quarterback duos in the league. And on the defensive side of the ball, things weren't exactly pretty either. I mean, Matt Milano looks like he's going to be out for an extended period of time. You lost Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde on the back end.
That's true. You did lose Hyde. I forgot about that.
Yeah, both of those guys on the back end will be gone now, and we need to see Von Miller take a step back. Finally, he's going to be healthy this year. So what are you going to get out of an old, kind of coming off an injury Von Miller? I mean, there's a lot of question marks with this Bills team, but thankfully they still have Josh Allen. So like I said, I couldn't necessarily put them ahead of the Jets, who we can talk about in a moment, but this Bills team's still going to be good. But the Dolphins, they're going to get over the hump, in my opinion. I know I picked them last year and they fell one game short, but like you talked about, the Bills got objectively worse. I mean, they definitely took a step back this offseason.
Well, let's talk about the Jets. Another very team I'm keeping an eye on. I do want the Jets to stay healthy. I want to see what this team actually is, but
for good or for bad.
The defense is there. All my question on the offensive side of the ball, and I just don't know what we're going to get out of Aaron Rodgers as current age. That's pretty much what all this boils down to. I mean, they have everything else is there. Stud running back Breece Hall. You got weapons. You got Garrett Wilson. Like I said, amazing defense.
They finally invested in the O-line too.
Yeah, decent O-line. So like all the pieces are there. But I mean, they have an aging quarterback, and I just don't know. It's not that I don't trust the Jets, but I know what the Dolphins and Bills are capable of. I'm not willing to put the Jets over them right now. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, if I see the Jets on my schedule, I'm not looking forward to it.
No, and then that's the thing, is this Jets team has all the makings of being a powerhouse team. That's why all these high-end media outlets don't stop talking about them, and I don't blame them at times, because this Jets team, if you look at it on paper, you're like, oh my gosh, this is Super Bowl contenders. And I understand it. It's just like we talked about, what are you going to get out of Aaron Rodgers? How's he going to come back to that Achilles injury? And I know we've seen him in training camp and he looks fine, but nothing tells the full story until you get to that real game action, and you got other guys on the side of the football that just, they want to tackle you. And it's just different when you're playing against your own teammates.
And weren't the reports coming out that training camp's kind of going south now for the Jets?
Yeah, the Athletic came out yesterday and said in their quotes, not mine. I don't want this to, don't shoot the messenger, but they said their team's in complete disarray right now. I mean, they are the whole Aaron Rodgers situation, I don't think is gone necessarily as peachy clean as they thought it was going to be. And, like we talked about, I feel like they did all the right things. I mean, they had another good draft class, in my opinion. They brought in two great tackles. You drafted Obi Melifonwu, and then you bring in Tyrone Smith, who is arguably the best tackle of this decade. And
we also have to talk about the Sam Reddick situation.
Well, that doesn't help their quote unquote disarray. I mean, that is just a situation in itself. You lose Bryce Huff, which is one of their better pass rushers, and you bring in Hassan Reddick, who's supposed to be, arguably just a 50-50 trade-off, just kind of contract situations. And Hassan Reddick looked like he might not even play a snap for the New York Jets.
He requested a trade. The Jets said they're not trading him, but I don't think he's reported all to camp yet.
No,
so
hasn't showed up once.
Yeah, we're under. Well,
and that's a big piece. That's a guy that's a double-digit sack guy. Kind of probably going to be the anchor of that D line this year. And that's no disrespect to guys like Jermaine Johnson, and they have pass rushers, but Hassan Reddick's a big-time player. You know it yourself. That guy can play football.
Yep. So, I like you said, the Jets are just more question marks than answers, I think is the best way to put it. And then we have the Patriots at number 4. To
Sure.
Complete rebuild. I think they're taking the right steps.
No, I do too.
I like the pick of Drake May. I really like the pick of Jalen Polk.
Yeah.
I like those two. Maybe they can develop some chemistry. They still have a ways to go. I'm curious to see what the Patriots look like now outside the Bill Belichick era. They're still kind of keeping that defensive approach with Coach Mayo, but I mean, it's still going to be a new system. It's going to be his system. I'm curious to see what the Patriots are made of, but I mean, they have we were talking about it before the show. They have a gauntlet to start their season.
Yeah.
And it's just better days will be ahead in New England, but I don't see it happening anytime soon.
Well, one thing I think is intriguing is going to see where this team's at about 8 weeks into the season. After they get through that gauntlet, how does this team look? How do they react to that early gauntlet? Do they come out of it kind of, in complete shambles, or do they at least come out of it and you're like, okay, the Patriots, maybe they lost a bunch of those games, but were they respectable? Is Jacoby Brissett playing? Is Drake May going to get the starting job about halfway through the season? There's a lot of questions there, but yeah, somehow we went all across the board here, and I didn't even have to talk about my Dolphins much.
Wow, I mean, that's something. I'm sure we'll be talking about them a little bit later.
Yeah.
So then we have the AFC West, and a little bit of a shakeup at the 2-3, but I mean, all things considered, I mean, this is going to be the Chiefs division to run away with. I think it's the easiest division in football to win for the Chiefs. I mean,
what a disgrace for the National Football League that we're basically handing the Chiefs another division.
I mean, look at it. I mean, Raiders, Chargers, and Broncos. Are you kidding me?
Well, it's weird too because I remember 5 to 10 years ago, this was the best division in football.
Yeah.
You go back to the old days of the Philip River Chargers and the Derek Carr Raiders and the Peyton Manning Broncos. This was the best division in football.
Alex Smith Chiefs.
Yeah, this was a good division in football for a long time, and then just kind of all the teams besides the Chiefs kind of just have been on a downward trend.
Well, let's talk about how great the Chiefs are for the 100th time in a row, and I'll tell you what. I hate to say it, but the Chiefs found a way to get remarkably better in the offseason.
How did they do it?
Because last year, the thing was the defense kind of carried the load. It was the offense carrying the load for the longest time.
Yeah.
They pretty much kept everybody that was on that defensive unit. They finally gave Patrick Mahomes some new weapons.
Yeah.
Rice is back. They got Hollywood Brown. You re-signed Juju. You drafted Xavier Worthy. By the way, they still have Travis Kelce. Playmakers all over the field. Isaiah Pacheco's not going anywhere.
Yeah, he's going to get better too.
I mean, they're set.
Yeah.
They're set. I mean, they're their early favorites to win the AFC, to win the Super Bowl. I mean, rightfully so. And, of course, you never bet against Patrick Mahomes.
No, I mean, just once again, a masterclass by this Chiefs organization. I mean, they find ways to just kind of always stay ahead of the curve and predict things. And it's almost like the Chiefs are always 2 steps ahead. And just when you think they don't have things figured out, they've got it figured out better than we could have imagined. And like you talked about, the story last year was that defense. They kind of carried the load when things were kind of not so pretty with the whole, Mahomes, Kelce, things were kind of not clicking. And this year they're like, we don't want to repeat that. So they went out and got them weapons. And I think all the guys they brought in were for a good price and they fit the scheme perfectly. And that's all you can ask for when you have a guy like Patrick Mahomes.
So outside the Chiefs, I do want to make a preface. Even though I do have the Chargers at 2, I do not see them making the playoffs.
I don't think anything.
I think teams 2, 3, and 4, even though you're second in the division, we're talking 500 at best.
Yeah, I do too.
So for me, for the Chargers, I'm a Michigan fan. They finally got a great head coach in John Harbaugh, a guy with a track record.
Sure.
He proves it in the NFL. He did it with the 49ers, and now he comes back to the NFL, which I'm very excited to see how the transition goes from NFL back to college, back to the NFL. This is going to be a completely different scheme, though, with John Harbaugh, because it is one thing only, and that is run the football.
Yeah.
I mean, that is his bread and butter, and for the longest time, the Chargers kind of a pass-heavy offense, and now it's kind of going to turn to a running attack. They're almost the Los Angeles Ravens in a way, because you get Gus Edwards, you get J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah.
That's the Ravens' backfield last year, but I still think the Chargers are ways away. You lose Keenan Allen. They lost a couple guys off.
Mike Williams,
that's the other one. Thank you. I mean,
we didn't even have to talk about it with the Jets, but that's a huge loss for the Chargers.
Yeah, and so now you're talking about Joshua Palmer, Ladd McConkey as your top offense. Quentin Johnson is trying to prove that he's on a bust this year. I mean, I just don't know who the heck Herbert's going to throw to, which is good because Harbaugh's going to try to run the ball. But I mean, if teams are going to have to pass the football in the NFL, you can't get away with running it how Michigan ran it 50 times in a row.
It's not going to work.
So I think I see the vision for Harbaugh. I think it's going to take a couple years to get there. I think just Justin Herbert can at least propel this team to a better record than the Raiders and the Broncos. That's my only rationale for that.
Yeah, speaking of Justin Herbert, I'm excited to see how he reacts to this new scheme. I mean, like you talked about, we've only seen him in that, kind of air raid offense, put 4 receivers on the outside, maybe a back in the backfield, and just let it rip. Whereas now we're going to see him probably under center this year.
Oh, Austin Eckler, that's the other loss for the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, they lost arguably their 3 best playmakers besides Justin Herbert, and now they're kind of retooling. And I don't think those are bad losses because I think in
they're
the
all
long term they're getting old. It's just that core was just ready to be gone, and Justin Herbert needed to stay. And I'm glad that they're kind of trying to find a way to build around him in a new sense. But I'm excited to see how Justin Herbert reacts to this. I mean, we don't see him under center much. We don't see him probably doing a lot of play action passes, maybe a little bit of dink and dunk, which we're not used to with Justin Herbert. We think of him as the, air it down the field, but I'm excited to see how this team kind of comes together. And like I said, I didn't put the Chargers in third as if they were bad. I mean, I think the Raiders and Chargers are just going to kind of sit around that 500 mark, and that's okay.
Well, what's your outlook on the Raiders? And so I covered the chart. What are your thoughts on the Raiders coming into this year with Gardner Minshew starting as the QB1?
Yeah, I mean, Gardner Minshew is an interesting story because you know him better as an Eagles fan. I kind of remember him back on the Jags day when he was Minshew mania and everyone was wearing mustaches in the crowd. But he's kind of just a formidable starter. I think they're kind of treating him as a bridge quarterback.
Yeah, I agree.
Think anyone's really seeing him as the future of this team. But I think
Sanders.
But I think for the sake of all the young talent that they have on the offensive side of the ball, they couldn't do another year with a guy like Garoppolo or even, and this is no disrespect to Aiden O'Connell, but I just think they needed a little bit of a better option than him. And he played pretty well last year when he was given the opportunity, and I think he's earned that backup job very nicely.
You want a hot take?
What?
Devontae Adams will not be a Raider at the end of the season.
And that's the thing is I think that rumors like that will start to swirl, and that's why they had to go out and get a guy like Minshew. Maybe, I mean, what's Minshew known for best? It's getting into his best players, and that was.
Yeah, he'll throw it up. He'll say, "F it, Devontae down there somewhere."
So I think that's kind of the Raiders' hope is you invested so much capital into this Devontae Adams deal, and I don't blame them. But now you have to reap the benefits of it, and I think if you still had a guy like Garoppolo in there, undoubtedly Devontae Adams would be looking for a trade right now. And then that doesn't mean that he still might not, because like you said, there's a chance he ends up on another team. I know people talk about the Jets all the time and the fit there, but this Raiders team, I'm excited to see them into year 2 of this system with Antonio Pierce, and they brought in a new offensive coordinator. And
also credit the Raiders for giving Antonio Pierce another shot. I mean, that's a guy that kind of saved a locker room that was going nowhere. They kind of rallied behind him. Yeah. Let's see what they could do. I mean, the Raiders beat the Chiefs last year. People forget about that.
Yeah, that Raiders team was playing well under Antonio Pierce. They were keeping close games, and they were honestly, I think they almost had a winning record, I believe, under Antonio Pierce. They were winning football games. So I'm excited just to see them take another step. That's kind of where my rationale was, and I've kind of seen the downward trend of this Chargers team. So I think Harbaugh's going to get them there, but I mean, we saw it in Michigan. It wasn't always pretty at first.
No, they definitely need some time to get his philosophies in there. And then the Broncos, who actually have kind of had a pretty good preseason, all things considered. Yeah. I mean, Bo Nix, arguably has had the best preseason.
Exceeded my expectations so far.
Arguably, he has had the best preseason of everyone in his draft class. Yeah. I mean, I'll say it. But I still think there's some work to do. I mean, keep in mind, you're not going against starters in preseason. And the weapons around him. I mean, you have Javonte Williams. You have
Cortland Sutton still there.
You have Cortland Sutton. I just still think the Broncos are in that rebuilding phase. Yeah. But I like the future. I mean, I thought Bo Nix was not a good pick, but I mean, the preseason, he's proved me wrong so far.
Yeah, I think we're kind of seeing what Sean Payton saw. I mean, if you go back and watch draft coverage, Sean Payton had nothing but good things to say about the kid, and all he said was he's pro ready, and that's kind of what the theme we're seeing in the preseason is he's not going to make any flashy plays, but he's gonna make all the right reads, and he's gonna get it to his playmakers, and that's kind of what Sean Payton has done his entire career. I mean, that was what Drew Brees became a future Hall of Famer off of, was that style of quarterback. And I think he kind of sees that in Bo Nix, and maybe a little bit more mobility than what we thought he could have. But I'm excited to see this Broncos team. And I think pretty much the only reason I'm going to be watching is to see the development of Bo Nix.
Yeah, I say that completely. So let's jump over to the NFC North, where Ben has one of his bolder takes. Yeah. I'll let you go first with your takes, specifically at that number 2 spot, but we can start from the bottom if you want.
Well, I mean, I think the bottom and the top are pretty self-explanatory. Yeah. And I think for me, I'd like to start at the bottom just because of the Vikings. Yeah. We talk about good off seasons, and I thought this team was going to have a good off season, but the amount of unluckiness that has happened to this team, everything that could have went wrong for this team has gone wrong. Thankfully, Justin Jefferson is healthy and he's happy. In other bad news, J.J. McCarthy goes down with a season-ending injury, and it looked like he was arguably pulling away and it was going to be the starter week 1, and it kind of looked like things were on the up. Instead, he tears, what is it, Achilles? Or no, it's his meniscus, I think it is.
Meniscus,
His meniscus gets fully torn, so he's got to sit out the full first year, which is the smart decision with how young he is. Don't take any chances with that. But Sam Darnold's going to be the starter, and I'm excited to see Sam Darnold as the full QB1. We haven't seen that since his Jets days, so it's going to be kind of the Sam Darnold experiment this year. But a lot of things.
Don't count out Sam Darnold. Don't count out Sam Darnold.
I mean, they still have Justin Jefferson, who could single-handedly probably win them 7 games this year, and the defense is still really good. I mean, I know it well myself. Brian Flores can coach defense, so that defense is going to be good this year. I mean, they're going to find ways to win a couple football games, but this is a good division as well. So I just think the other 3 teams have a slight edge. Now, once we get to the middle, things get a little interesting. I don't know what your outlook is on the Bears. I know what my outlook is on the Bears, but I have them in third.
I like the Bears. I think they're going to make some noise this year. I think they're going to win some games that people don't expect them to win. I mean, great offseason. Let's just talk about what they did. Obviously, Caleb Williams, Roma Dunze, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Swift, and by the way, they still kept DJ Moore, one of the most underrated receivers in the National Football League. We all know the Bears are always going to have a solid defense.
They took care of their defense, too. They brought Jalen Johnson's extended. It's going to be the first full year of Montez Sweat, who we forget how good he is. I mean, he was traded for a second-round pick for a reason. Montez Sweat can attack the quarterback. So they kept all their pieces on defense. They upgraded on offense, and another year in this scheme.
I think the Bears are a season. I like everything they did. There's no reason for me not to. I just think they're a year or two away. I think Williams just needs to develop a little bit. Yeah, I just like the Packers and Lions a little bit more, but this is them being at third is no knock on the Bears whatsoever. I just think it comes down to you're probably a bit lower on the Packers than I am.
My rationale for the Packers, I think, comes down to their lack of talent on the offensive side of the ball besides Jordan Love. And I know Josh Jacobs is going to make a huge difference.
I really like the Josh Jacobs pickup. And by the way, Aaron Jones is the Viking now, which is just kind of weird to think about.
Yeah, it is kind of weird. Yeah. It just felt like those. It looks weird when I saw the jersey swaps. Yeah. Just both those guys don't look like they should be in those uniforms.
Yeah, I agree. But sorry, go ahead with the Packers.
It's okay. I don't know. The Josh Jacobs thing's going to be helpful, and I don't think Josh Jacobs is a bad player, but the wide receiver room still kind of has question marks for me. I don't really see a true alpha in that receiver room, and I see a lot of guys that can make plays, but I need someone to kind of step up when Jordan Love.
They have a bunch of great wide receiver twos. I have no problem saying that.
That's a good way to put it.
But they have 4, maybe the most well-rounded wide receiver room, but they have no alpha. You're right. Yeah, I think they have 4 wide receiver twos.
That kind of worries me. The tight end room is like whatever. Luke Musgrave kind of started to come on a little bit towards the end of last season, and I think this defense kind of gets overhyped a little, and I don't think it's a bad defense by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't know if it's good enough to kind of carry the load for the offensive, deficiencies. And, they prove us wrong every year, and LaFleur can coach with the best of them. So I don't really know. I mean, it's hard to say, but something about this Bears renaissance kind of intrigued me, and I think they might just edge them out slightly.
Then we both had the Lions at 1. I don't think there's really a whole lot to say here. I mean, if anything, they may have only gotten better over the offseason. I mean, and their schedule, I mean, mainly all dome games. Yeah. And over his career, Jared Goff can light it up in a dome. I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown's back. Gibbs is only going to continue to develop more. Montgomery's still there.
I can't wait to see Jahmyr Gibbs this year.
Laporta in year 2. I mean, I don't really think we have a lot more to add.
No, I don't think they lost anyone of value, and I think they just kept bringing in more depth pieces. They re-signed all their own guys. They had another solid draft class. What else could you ask for as a Lions fan? I mean, this team was one bad quarter away from the Super Bowl last year, so just stick all the same. They took care of Jared Goff, which I guess is probably the big story, and I know that's controversial to some people, but I don't know what you think, but that's the right play. Jared Goff is.
I love Jared Goff. Okay. I think he's very underrated quarterback. Good. Okay, maybe overhated. I like Jared Goff.
Yeah.
So we go to the NFC South, and for me, I don't think there's really a whole lot to talk with about the Saints and the Panthers.
We agree again. Look at that.
Yeah, down the board. Panthers, I finally like what they're doing. I think I finally see a vision offensively. Yeah. I like the Deontay Johnson pickup. I love the Jonathan Brooks pick long term.
He's going to be out for a little bit, I saw, though.
Yeah, he's going to be out for a little bit. I honestly do not rush him back. I mean, he could be a big piece for them. Yeah. They have a long ways to go. I mean, this defense is going to be, it's going to be like a puzzle, not even close to being complete. And then for the Saints, I don't know. I mean, Derek Carr is just.
Can I say the Saints, in my opinion, are like the most boring team in the league this year?
I think the Panthers are more intriguing. I will shake on. I think the Panthers are a more interesting story than the Saints. I mean,
if I see the Saints on my TV on Sunday, I'm like, what am I watching for? I mean, what exciting piece of the Saints am I watching for besides, I guess, Chris Olave?
I guess Chris Olave, but is that even? I mean, no knock on Olave, dude's a stud, but it's It's Derek Carr. It's Alvin Kamara, who at one point
I like Alvin Kamara.
I do, but I feel like we've seen him now for so many years. We know his little shtick with.
I'm curious to see how he comes out because once again, Alvin Kamara was one of the best backs in the league just a few years ago. I mean, he was scoring 5 touchdowns on Christmas Day, doing snow angels in the end zone, and he kind of just was off the field issues, kind of hindered him last year, and then the injuries. But I guess that's all we got for the Saints. I mean, I don't know.
That's all I really have for the Saints. The Panthers, Bucks. I mean, I like the Bucks. I mean, they knocked out my Eagles last year. They had I think, by all things considered, exceeded expectations last year.
Above my expectations by a mile.
Maybe Baker Mayfield has just solidified himself as a starter there for a few more seasons.
Good for him.
I mean, it's kind of just the same squad as last year. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin,
Rashad
White, thank you.
Kate Otten.
There's just starting to age on the outside. I mean, how many more years left do we have of this Evans-Godwin duo being one of the better duos in the NFL? I don't know. I mean, you always talk about once you hit that year 30 mark, the fall off starts to happen.
Sure, unless you're like Tom Brady or something.
I'm not saying it's going to fall off completely for the Bucs this year, but I think this is the year we start to say, okay,
the holes start to show.
The holes of that Brady team kind of get a bit more visible, and I think the Falcons, who maybe honestly I kind of forgot, they might have had the best offseason.
Yeah, it's up there
in the NFL.
We could talk about those Falcons, but I think, like you said, the Bucs is pretty simple. Just the holes are going to start to show a little bit, and I think this team has a chance of making the playoffs again, just because of how weak the NFC is.
Yep.
But I think they run into a team like the Falcons. They're on a different level.
Well, let's talk about those Falcons. I mean, I know they're a team you're going to be following very close to this year. They pick up Kirk Cousins, they Drake London, they get Darnell Mooney, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson. I mean,
Tyler Algier is still there.
The core is there.
Yeah,
the core is there, and it was always they need a quarterback. Well, they got a quarterback now who and to Kirk Cousins' credit, say what you will about Kirk Cousins, but one thing Kirk Cousins does well is distributes the ball.
And he produces.
And he can. Everyone's gonna be able to eat in this offense or Kirk Cousins. It's one of the things that Kirk Cousins does well. What
rare things?
Okay, well, we talk about the Kirk Cousins benchmark. I'm not gonna act like Kirk Cousins is gonna win the Super Bowl. He does a lot of things well. I should have said rare things.
Okay.
One of the things he does well is he distributes the ball well. Everyone's going to get a piece.
Yeah.
I mean, this is got to be the year the Falcons make a jump because we got to know what we have in Kyle Pitts and Drake London.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been question marks. Are they what they think they are, or are they frauds? We're going to find out this year. And I think
add Bijan Robinson to that list.
And Bijan Robinson has all the potential in the world. I mean, everything's in front of the Falcons. The question is, can they grasp it? I'll tell you what, I'm predicting them to be first, but it really wouldn't shock me if it also falls apart because these have it's all about potential.
Yeah.
The potential's there, but I mean, that's what it is, potential. Nothing's been given yet.
Yeah, I mean, I love this Falcons team. I loved them last year. I think for me, the biggest, jump is the obvious one. It's the quarterback. I mean, you bring in Kirk Cousins, who's, I know he's getting up there in age, and I think people forget how old he really is, but Kirk Cousins can still distribute the ball. And not only did you get Kirk Cousins, but you drafted Michael Penix as a backup. So there's really no possible way for this team to have worse quarterback play than they did last year. They continue to add on the offensive side of the ball. Darnell Mooney, I think, is one of the most underrated signings. That's a Mooney, baby. That's a great fit. Their offense is going to stay. I think we're going to see Drake London take a step. I think we might finally see Kyle Pitts maybe start to become a shell of what he was drafted 4th overall to be. And then on defense, you bring in Raheem Morris, who's a defensive-minded head coach. And
they trade for the guy from the Patriots. I forgot to say that.
Oh, well, I was getting there. Yeah. So they get Matthew Judon, which felt like a good deal for them to bring in another pass rusher. On the back end, you still have Jesse Bates, who's arguably the best safety in football. And you bring in Justin Simmons as well. And all of a sudden, this defense has the makings of being a top-tier defense. And you hope to get, at least above average on the offensive side of the ball. And all of a sudden, you have at least a good playoff team.
I mean, I'll tell you what. I mean, if the Falcons put it all together, that's a scary playoff draw.
You don't want to play them. You just don't want to play them. And I know people say what they want to say about Kirk Cousins in big games, but I don't care. This is not a team you want to face, in the Superdome.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we go to my division. Look at that. We agreed down the board again.
Hey, that is 3 of 6 so far.
All right, all right. So we both agree Eagles, Cowboys, Commanders, Giants. If this does come to fruition, it'll be the first time we have a repeat winner and Lord knows how many years. I mean, it's called the NFC East is known for as a new division winner each year. So hopefully my Birds can break the curse. Since we agree, we can just kind of go down the line or get up the line, I should say. The Giants. I like getting Malik Neighbors. That's pretty much the only good thing I can say about the Giants right now. I mean, Daniel Jones.
Yikes.
Yeah. Thank you. You lose Saquon Barkley.
Yikes.
I mean, what more do I need to say?
Yikes. That's what it is. Yeah, I mean, there's bad things. I mean, Hard Knocks kind of gave us an inside scoop to how bad this team handled this offseason. I mean, Saquon Barkley was
he was the franchise.
He was the franchise for 5 years, and you let him walk for
to your division rival.
To your division rival for arguably a team-friendly deal. And it doesn't, I mean, it doesn't get much worse than that, but oh wait, it does. You still have Daniel Jones at quarterback, and boy, did he look good in the preseason. So,
oh my Lord!
And you bring in Malik Neighbors, which is cool. You unretire a jersey number for the guy without even playing an NFL snap.
Yeah, let's just talk about that. Nothing against Malik Neighbors. I think he's going to be a stud.
I do too.
But what's the point of retiring numbers if we're just going to unretire them?
I mean, I know it's best.
And the person that they retired is not even alive anymore. Like, his family made this decision.
He's got no defense.
That really rubbed me the wrong way. I just had to say that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I saw it myself when the Dolphins drafted Tua. People were begging for them to unretire 13 because of, it's like, no, just there's a reason these numbers are retired. Yeah. I don't know the history of the Giants like that, but apparently that guy was well respected and you know, his jersey was retired for a reason. Leave it that way. I don't. And I hope Malik Neighbors would respect that.
If anything, it allows these players to build their own legacy. Let them retire a new number for if these prospects are so good where you want to unretire a number.
Sure.
Why don't you just let them retire a new number if they're going to be that good?
Exactly. No, I don't disagree at all. And this Giants team just didn't really do much. I mean, Malik Neighbors is like the only thing that I can walk out of their offseason and be like, okay, they made progress there. That was a good pickup for them. Other than that, I don't even know if I know who else they signed. I can't even think of who else is on that. Didn't they sign Devin Singletary?
Yeah, he's their new RB1, the Saquon Bar.
Awesome.
Here's what I'll say.
Okay.
The 3 and 4 teams are 2 examples of how to properly rebuild and how not to rebuild. Because as much as I'm an Eagles fan, and thank goodness our third roommate's not here to hear this.
Yeah, how about those Commanders?
He's a passionate Commanders fan. But finally, after years and years of mediocrity, the Commanders finally have a vision.
They're building a regime. We can see the regime that at least resembles something of value.
Yes, something of value. And Jane Daniels as a prospect, I think it's high risk, high reward. I think he's the most bust potential quarterback.
He's polarizing
in the draft, but I'll tell you what, if everything goes right, he can be far and away
the best. Be better. He could be better than Caleb Williams if he turns out the way they think he could turn out.
Absolutely, it's a high risk, high reward pick.
Yeah.
But other than that, I like what the Commanders did. I mean, you still have Terry McLaurin. You get Austin Eckler to kind of have a 1-2 punch with Brian Thomas.
Brian Robinson.
Or Brian Thomas. Those Jags, man, I can't forget them. Brian Robinson. This defense are starting to get more pieces involved. They've been acquiring these draft picks. You trade Sweat. You trade Chase Young. They're starting to get these younger defensive players. They get my boy from Michigan. I'm blanking on his name, Mikey Sandstrill.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be a dog defensively. I like what the Commanders are doing. I saw them at 3. I still think they're a few years away.
Sure.
But, I mean, under Dan Snyder, under Ron Rivera, it looks like the Commanders are going nowhere. At least now, the Commanders fans at least have something to grasp onto.
Yeah, I think what I want to talk about is the regime, as you kind of alluded to. The Ron Rivera and Dan Snyder era is in the past, and now all of a sudden you have I forget the owner's name, Josh. What's his name?
He's from the 49ers. I got you.
Josh Harris or something. Well, this is the
Adam Peters. Adam Peters is the GM. Josh Harris is the
Josh Harris. That is okay. Yeah. So you have this new regime, and Adam Peters comes in, an experienced GM in the 49ers organization. And right away, they hired Dan Quinn, who, despite I think it was kind of a mixed reaction when he was hired. I think it's a good pickup for them. I mean, you bring in Dan Quinn, who, one thing you could say about Dan Quinn is he knows how to coach defense.
Yep.
And there's no knock to that. So I think the best way to handle that is they bring in Dan Quinn. But if you're going to bring in a guy like Dan Quinn, you got to bring someone with a little bit of a different style of offense.
And they did just that.
You bring in Cliff Kingsbury, which I know his head coaching stops weren't great, but that guy knows offensive football, and I think he can coordinate with the best of them. And one thing you could say about this offense is it's not going to be boring to watch, and they're going to give Jane Daniels opportunities to shine. And that's all you can ask for. And I think for Washington, you at least start to see a vision, and I think they have to still kind of pick up the crumbs of the previous regime and kind of fix a lot of their mistakes. But I think they're headed in the right direction, undoubtedly.
Yeah, then that leaves the Birds and the Cowboys. We'll start with the Cowboys, who
kind of opposite.
Kind of opposite. I mean, it's kind of just a CeeDee Lamb show, by the way. Thank goodness they paid that man. It looked like
What a mistake that would have been for that organization.
I mean, they need CDLA. I mean, that's pretty much all they really got going from offensively. They bring back Ezekiel Elliott. They pick up Dalvin Cook. I mean,
the 2019 running back room. That would be electric about 5 years ago.
I mean, outside of Alex Ely, I mean, the strength of this team is their defense.
Yeah.
I mean, Micah Parsons. I mean, what more do we need to say about him?
Trayvon Diggs will be back this year.
And Teron Bland. Who got hurt? Someone got hurt for
Bland is hurt for a little bit.
So Bland was the one that got hurt.
But he'll be out. He'll be back.
Yes. So I mean, the strength of this team is their defense. If their defense keeps them in games, we saw what Dak and Lamb can do.
Yeah.
I mean, Dak had a great year last year. I'll tell you what. And Dak's playing for something this year because he's looking to get his payday. Micah's looking for his payday. I mean, Jerry Jones got to empty out the wallets, but I'll tell you what, they still have a lot of depth.
No.
I mean, they're very top heavy, and I think the rest of the roster is just slightly below average. And I think when we look at all my Eagles, I think across the board, they're just very well rounded. They finally approach their defense. You bring back CJ, you get Quinyon Mitchell, you get Cooper DeJean, you get Bryce Huff, who I think is an upgrade just because you need some youth.
Yeah.
We had an aging D line. I mean, Fletcher Cox.
The Eagles as a whole were getting old.
Yeah, Fletcher Cox. I mean, he's not there anymore. Brandon Graham. This is it for him. You need some youth.
Yeah.
So we have youth all over the defense now. And, I mean, offensively, I mean, it's Saquon Barkley. I know you lose Kelsey. That offensive line is still no joke.
They're going to play.
And you get Dotson from the Commanders. I mean, I love what my Birds did this
Which I guess is a good time to talk about this since we're in that division. I thought it was an intriguing trade for the Eagles. You bring in I think the Eagles were kind of struggling to find a wide receiver 3. Yep. They kind of brought in a few guys. They signed Devontae Parker at one point, who I think Eagles fans kind of thought that was going to be the answer. He ends up retiring, which is fine, whatever. It just didn't work out. They kind of signed a couple guys off to practice squads.
Paris Campbell was maybe going to be that guy.
Paris Campbell was signed for a little bit, but I think he just got released actually after
He's a practice squad guy.
Okay, so they brought him back in the practice squad, but then they kind of find the answer, and I think Jahan Dotson's going to come in, and they don't need him to do much. The expectations are low, but I mean, this guy was drafted in the top 20 of the draft for a reason.
He's a first-round pick.
Yeah, he's a heck of a player. I mean, he was productive as a rookie. Kind of took a step back last year, but I think it's going to fit nicely. And I think the Eagles, as you talked about, I guess I'll give my spiel on the Eagles, is they just kind of fixed some of their issues. I liked them bringing in Vic Fangio, which I know me and Vic Fangio don't always get along after what happened in Miami, and that's fine. But he's at the place he wants to be now. He's coaching players he wants to coach, and Vic Fangio can coach defensive football. I can say that with pride. I'll say that he can coach defensive football. So it's going to be an upgrade on the defensive side of the ball. I think we're finally. I'm not going to give away too much, but the Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown, Devontae Smith thing is no joke, and the three of them are going to kind of
especially with what I can't wait to see what Kellen Moore can draw up.
Well, and that's the big thing is they bring in Kellen Moore, and last year you could just see the offense wasn't. It kind of just hit a wall, and I think it was smart at the time for them to keep things all the same, but you needed some fresh, some fresh blood in there. I think Kellen Moore brings that. He's a younger offensive coordinator, and we think he's been in the league now, but he's still very young in the offensive coordinator, realm. And I think it's going to make a huge difference. And Saquon Barkley, if he stays healthy, it's going to be a problem in this offense.
That's pretty much all. I really have nothing more to say. I mean, pretty much just made my team look great on a silver platter. So I appreciate it. So we have one last division, the NFC West, which I actually think is another really fun division. But I mean, obviously the 49ers are still the cream of the crop. Yeah. And maybe still probably the NFC fair just because, especially since now they got Ayuk figured out.
Until proven otherwise, they have to be.
The only question mark I really have with the 49ers is the Trent Williams situation, because that's a big part of that team. I think people don't realize how important having an elite left tackle is.
And especially Trent Williams of all guys.
I mean, other than that, I mean, it's the 49ers. It was a complete team in football. I think the question is can they stay healthy? Because the 49ers are starting to age just a little bit. Yeah. Not a lot, but just a little bit with their key player. But I think bringing back Ayuk was a great decision for them, especially for.
Well, good time we recorded this. Literally yesterday, the Ayuk news finally broke, which I feel like we could have recorded this 2 months ago and we would have been saying, well, it's coming next week. So I mean, finally it got done, and I think that's what you're talking about is they need guys like that to step up because of the aging. I mean, Deebo Samuel he's kind of getting up there now. I know he's probably
McCaffrey's up there.
Yeah, especially for a running back, he's getting up there in age. Kittle's he's been in the league for a while. I mean, these guys are getting up there in age, and that's okay. They can still. Like we said, I think until proven otherwise, they're still the favorites to come out of the NFC, but at least starts to raise your eyebrow a little bit.
I'll tell you what, I was almost tempted to put the Rams over them just because that's not knock on Niners. I just absolutely love with a capital L this Rams team this year.
We can shake. I am all on board with that. This Rams team has just. I don't know if the world's going to appreciate how good this Rams team can be. You go ahead.
I mean, I was this close to put them over. I mean, you have a fully healthy Cooper Kupp this year. You have a
Now wait, that guy won the Triple Crown 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, Puka Nacua, he's going to be good. Kyron Williams, I mean, we saw what he did last year. And Matthew Stafford
who's still a top 10 quarterback in football.
He's so underrated. You bring in Blake Corum. This defense is no joke. I mean, just across the board playmakers. I think Sean McVay is still one of the best, if not the best, offensive mind in all of football. I love this Rams team so much. And I'll tell you what, I don't want to face the Rams. I was this close to putting. I think the Rams are going to give the 49ers a serious run for their money and win this division. The Rams will beat the Niners at least once this year.
Yeah, they'll split. I think they'll split the season series, and I think the Rams really have a shot, depending on how the seeding comes out, to really. There's a world where we see a Rams Niners NFC championship.
They're my dark horse Super Bowl pick. I'll say it right now. They're my dark horse Super Bowl pick.
They're really good. I don't know if it's a dark horse Super Bowl pick for me, but I really do see the vision in this Rams team. The question for me is the defense.
Yep.
Just because you lose a couple guys, I mean, the loss of Aaron Donald is still gonna, it's still gonna matter, and just on the back end, I still kind of question their safety talent and their corner talent, and I think they've kind of invested a little bit into that. And one of their best linebackers, Ernest Jones, got traded. Yep. So I wonder on the back end of their defense. But, I mean, this team, until proven otherwise, I mean, the defense never really falters too hard for them. So, and the offense can sure as heck carry a lot of the load.
If the defense just keep them in games, they're going to win.
The offense will take care of its business. And like you said, if they can just not have to go in a shootout every single game, they're going to be more than all right.
And that leaves the Seahawks and the Cardinals. And again, two teams I both really like what they're doing.
Well, let me relax. I don't like the Cardinals one bit.
Oh, really? I see the vision for the Cardinals. I think this year it's not going to be it, but I think getting Marvin Harrison Jr. was great. I think getting what is his name? Trey
McBride.
Well, Trey McBride and
Trey Benson.
Yes, I like both of them a lot. I think the Cardinals are a few years away. I think they might win some games they don't think. I'm not saying they're going to be above 500, but I think they'll be closer to 500 than what people think. But let's talk about Seattle. I can tell you do not disagree with me. You do not agree with me at all on that one, which is fine. I kind of like disagree. That's what makes the show run.
Well, can Kyler Murray be what he was? I think that's what it comes down to for me is we haven't seen Kyler Murray. I feel like Kyler Murray hasn't played in like 2 years.
Well, he's been hurt now. Now he's finally had a full offseason to get fully healthy. This is the first time he's been fully healthy.
So you believe in him? I don't. That's kind of what it comes
I think that's a different. I mean, when was the last time we saw what did the Cardinals do last time Kyler Murray was fully healthy?
Did they make the play? Have they made the
playoffs? That was that 9-0. I think it was 9-0.
Did they make the playoffs that year?
I don't know if they made the playoffs that year, but they had a heck of a start to the regular season. All I'm saying is I think they're gonna be better than what people think they are. But look, I mean, I still pick them to be fourth.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just saying I think the difference is I think the Cardinals are bottom 5 in the league this year.
Okay, yeah.
So
I'm a little bit higher than that. But let's talk about Seattle.
Sure.
Go ahead. You can lead this one. So I have my list.
Seattle's fun. I think Geno Smith's kind of maybe this is his last hurrah. Maybe
I agree.
Maybe we start to see the end of Geno Smith, and it's good for them because they brought in Sam Howell as a backup. Who, even in the preseason, he started to look like the guy that I thought he could be in Washington, and that's not to what Washington was doing. I think it was kind of wrong place, wrong time kind of thing. But Seattle is still good. They still have Kenneth Walker, who was really good as a rookie, and DK Metcalf is still DK Metcalf. I mean, that guy is.
I expect JSN to make a huge leap this year, personally.
That's where I was getting at. Jackson Smith and Jigba is just he's a good player, and I think he was kind of underrated as coming out of the draft, and I think he's going to be underrated this year, and I think we're going to kind of finally see him step into that wide receiver 2 role, and Tyler Lockett's kind of he's getting old, and I think he's going to kind of take a step back.
I'm telling you, man, JSN is a stud. In that Ohio State receiver room, he was the wide receiver 1 there over guys like Olave, over guys like Garrett Wilson.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the stud there.
He was the alpha.
I think he's really.
And that's not by coincidence either.
I would not surprise me if he's the wide receiver 1 on this team by the end of this year.
Yeah, I mean, there's a chance he outgains. He gets more receptions and yards than DK Metcalf, and that's no knock at DK Metcalf. I still think he's one of the better receivers in the league. It just shows the type of leap I think everyone's kind of maybe seeing with JSN. I think he's a really special talent, and the defense is still really good. I mean, you have a guy like Tariq Woolen, who's also a complete, specimen on the defensive side of the ball. And, I think the big thing for me is what do they do now that we're outside of the Pete Carroll? It's the first year without Pete Carroll.
Good point.
And I want to see what they're going to do to it. I don't know. It's a different team. We were just so used to those Pete Carroll Seahawks. So I'm intrigued by this team. I just couldn't quite put them over the 2 powerhouses.
I agree completely. So that's it for our division predictions. We can kind of just fly through these. I don't think we have to really go too in depth with these.
No, these are fun to do, though.
Yeah. So these are our way too early award show predictions. I'll tell you what, Ben. Loving what I am seeing in that MVP category.
Can I preface all of these by saying if one of us hits at least one of these, it's a miracle. It's a miracle if any of us hit at least one of these, let alone multiple. I mean, these are complete just shots in the dark. I mean, we have.
I kind of went. Your answers are more fun than mine. I kind of went for the boring answer. I mean, Mahomes is MVP.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think anybody here wants to hear that unless you're a Chiefs fan. But I mean, I think they're going to be the best team in football, and I think Mahomes with his weapons.
I mean, I guess we can talk about Jalen Hurts if you want. I mean, I'm sure you'd love to.
Oh yeah, bring it on. Let me hear it. Give me the Jalen Hurts MVP case.
I love Jalen Hurts. I mean, I've watched this guy over his NFL career kind of start as a guy that I questioned when he first came to the league. I was questioning Jalen Hurts, that first couple years, and even that first year they made the playoffs. I don't remember who they lost to, but they snuck in as a wild card team, got bounced in the first round, and then the following year the explosion happened. They go on the massive win streak. They make it all the way to the Super Bowl, and if it wasn't for the guy on the other side of the screen, they probably would have won that Super Bowl if they played any other quarterback in that Super Bowl.
Or if Bradbury doesn't make a holding. I'm so salty over. I'm sorry.
Okay, but my point is that the Eagles scored on almost every possession besides one, and that cost them the game. And I'll say it, that's not Jalen Hurts' fault. No. You can't be expected to be perfect in a Super Bowl, let alone a playoff game. It's that's outrageous. But he has the weapons, and I think AJ Brown and Devontae Smith continue to get better as a tandem. Like we talked about, bringing in Jahan Dotson is going to help a lot, and Saquon Barkley is the best running back they've had in this scheme. He's better than DeAndre Swift. He's better than what they've had. And I think if they can keep Saquon upright and he still has the O-line, and I think the new scheme is going to favor him a lot, and the Eagles are going to win a lot of football games. And that's kind of the recipe for an MVP award is win a lot of football games and put up good stats. And he can still run the ball. They're probably still going to do the tush push every so often. I know it's probably not going to be as good without Kelsey now, but they're probably still going to do it, and he's still going to run a few touchdowns in. And it's this Eagles team's going to win a lot of games. So,
well, you scratch my player's back, I'll scratch yours. I got Tyreek Hill for Offensive Player of the Year. I just think he's going to blow us off what he did last year. I mean, I just think he has a serious chance to set some NFL records in this McDaniel scheme.
Yeah.
I mean, what's there not to say about Tyreek Hill, especially with?
Well, for me, it comes down to the other
Jalen
Waddle, and Devon Achane, and all these guys coming into the system. That's the only reason. I think no one disagrees that. I mean, Tyreek Hill is voted the number one player in the league by his peers. I mean, this guy is a one of one. So you can keep going. Sorry.
No, all I really have left to say is I really like what McDaniel does with his motions to give kind of Tyreek Hill. I mean, he's known for his speed, and McDaniel's using him perfectly for it.
Who knows? We might see a new motion again with him this year. Who knows?
So, I mean, that's what I have for Tyreek. I'll just go down the rest of my line real quick.
Sure,
For yours. I got Micah Parsons for Defensive Player of the Year, really because he's playing for that bag this year. I think he's going to go crazy.
That's a good point.
And honestly, I think Defensive Player of the Year, which leans towards edge rushers and people that get sacks.
I have one myself.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of how the award leans just gets so hard.
Unless you get like 12 picks or something.
Yeah, so I just took Micah Parsons. I was torn between him and TJ Watt. Those were the two I was debating between, but I went with Micah. He has a chip on his shoulder, trying to earn that bag, and I think he's going to get a lot of sacks. Offensive Rookie of the Year, I'm going Marvin Harrison Jr. just because he's going to a system where he's going to be the wide receiver one on day one, and he has a more competent quarterback than Daniel Jones. And so I was kind of between him and Malik Neighbors.
Poor Daniel Jones, man.
The only reason I didn't go with a rookie quarterback is I just think all the rookie quarterbacks are not going to be able to maybe get a 500 season at best.
Sure.
And I just think the record's going to hold them back, and I think Marvin Harrison just can put.
What do you think the stat line looks like for Marv?
Oh man, putting me on the spot here. I think.
You think he breaks 1,000 with ease?
Oh, I think he breaks 1,000 easily. I think he may even flirt. I don't want to say double digit.
1,300.
I'm gonna say like 1,250.
1,250. How many touchdowns?
1,250 touchdowns or 1,250. Yeah, 1,000. 1,250 yards, 8 touchdowns. Book it. You've heard it first.
8 touchdowns.
8 touchdowns. 8 touchdowns. Cardinals are gonna be losing in games. They're gonna be slinging it.
Yeah.
And then I don't want to mispronounce the name. I'm just gonna say Latu from the Colts.
Yeah. Again,
similar to the Defensive Player of the Year, this is just a word that leads towards edge rushers. And I'll just be honest, I just picked who I thought was the best edge rusher prospect.
He was the first defensive player taken off the board.
I'm not gonna lie, my life's not too crazy for this one. I took who I thought was the best edge rusher in this draft, and that's Latu. So that's who I got for my picks.
I'll start with D-Roy since we're at the bottom. We're on the subject. I took Chop Robinson, which one can say that's a biased pick, and I could understand if people would think that.
Hey, by the way, if you watch our draft special, I called this one. Chop Robinson to the Dolphins. I was the first person to say it. No one wanted to believe me. Yeah. Now here you are picking for Defensive Rookie of the Year.
And
everything's come full circle.
The thing about Chop Robinson is if you would have asked me this probably about 3 to 4 months ago, I would have said, no way possible. But I think the offseason has kind of shown us that immediately Chop Robinson came into camp, made an impact for the Dolphins. And the big thing is he's going to have to play day one, not by his choosing, but just by the injuries of that D-line. Mm-hmm. Jalen Phillips has actually been above schedule, so that's good. But Bradley Chubb's still out for a long time, and we saw Jack Barrett retire for the Dolphins. I know he came out and said he would play for Tampa Bay, which that's a whole other topic I don't want to get into. But he's going to have to get to play day one, and I think this new Miami Dolphins defense with Anthony Weaver is going to kind of rely on their D-line. We saw it. Anthony Weaver comes from Baltimore, and there's one thing Baltimore always did was they got a lot of sacks in the D-line. So, it was kind of a toss-up, like you said. This award, these defensive player awards always favor edge rushers, and I don't know. Chop Robinson just kind of seems like he might figure it out.
Sure.
I went with the boring one. This is probably my only boring one, which was Offensive Rookie of the Year, and I thought about it and I was like, there's really not many other options. The only other option that came to mind for me, this is a quarterback-driven award almost all the time.
Yeah, Marvin Harris got my bold pick. I hope he wins it. I'll be surprised if it's on.
I'd like if a non-quarterback wins it. It just seems like quarterbacks always win this award, and for me, just none of the rookie quarterbacks necessarily have my full faith besides Caleb Williams. He's exceeded expectations for me so far. Came in the preseason, was doing Patrick Mahomes-esque things. I'm not calling him Patrick Mahomes.
No, I hear you.
He was doing things that we don't usually see out of quarterbacks. And, he's going to win football games like we talked about. Record does matter in these awards. This is my kind of fun one, I think. I don't know if anyone's really seeing this one.
Aiden Hutchinson, Michigan man.
Aiden Hutchinson, I think he's continuing to get better and better each year. We saw it in his rookie year, kind of the diversity in his game, forcing fumbles, sacks, interceptions. Last year, we started to see his pass rush come out a little bit more, and I think he's going to keep building on top of that. And I think this guy's probably going to get like 17 sacks this year, 16 sacks, force a couple fumbles, continue to just be a tackle machine in the run game, and he might even catch a few picks. Who knows? Offensive Player of the Year, this is another really fun one. I don't know if this guy's a really fun one. I don't know if this guy's on anyone's radar. I love Bijan Robinson. I think he's going to explode onto the scene this year. This is guy's a generational talent. Everyone thought he was going to be a generational talent, and he's been great for this team. And then we already talked about the MVP, so there's not much to go on there.
So now we only got one thing left to do. That is to predict week one. We are, Friday? So we're 6 days away from the NFL season as we're recording this. Not sure what days will be uploaded. It'll be blogged before the NFL season. So let me go to our other graphic here. So
look at our beautiful faces.
We kind of went for a bit more of a humorous look here with our picks. But we can just go down the line here. We just kind of go through rapid fire again. We have the records there. So as the season goes, we'll see how we're doing across the board. It looks like we're in agreement on most of these. So let's just go for it. Baltimore at Kansas City. We're both rocking with – actually, no, that's at the top. You're going Ravens. I'm going Chiefs. I think you think the Chiefs are going to have that cliche slow start?
It always happens. I feel like every year this Chiefs team just looks like they're going to be the worst team ever in the first couple of weeks, and then Patrick Mahomes does Patrick Mahomes. Do I think this could go the other way? Absolutely. There's a reason this is a kickoff game. Both these teams are extremely talented. And for a guy that doesn't even like the Ravens that much this year, I think they're going to win this one.
All right, fair enough. I'm rocking with the Chiefs. I just think they're the best team in the NFL, and I think with their new weapons, I think maybe they finally have a slot.
Well, the interesting Marquise Brown won't play.
That is true. That's fair.
They did announce he's not expected to play, so that could mean a lot. And we don't. What's the deal with Rashid Rice? Is he playing?
Yeah, he'll be ready to go. Looks like it's going to be a next year type thing.
Okay.
Which, you can say what you want about that, but that's a conversation for another channel.
We don't cover that stuff. That's whatever the law says. That's what it says.
So then we have the Friday game, which involves my Birds playing over in Brazil.
Feels weird having a Friday game, by the way.
Yeah, very, very weird. That's kind of just usually reserved for.
But I'm with it. I'm cool with it.
I'll tell you what. I'm an Eagles fan. This is one of the games I'm more worried about. I think it's one of the harder games on our schedule. I'll tell you what. I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles lose this game. And if they lose this game, I'm not necessarily panicking either, because you're playing it's week one in a neutral site against a really good opponent. That being said, I'm still going to go with the Eagles. They are overall the better team. They have the better weapons. This is technically a home game for them, which kind of makes me want to throw up in my mouth.
Which I hate when they do this, because it's unfortunate to their schedule, because then that means you lose a home game at your own stadium. We talk about every year with the London games. It's unfortunate to the teams that have to play these home games in other stadiums, because it's not really a home game. But
I'm rocking with the Birds. They're just a better team overall than the Packers. But I think it's going to be a really good game. I think the one's going to be very close as well.
Yeah, I mean these two kickoff games are excellent. Yeah. Excellent work by the NFL to lead into this NFL season. All 4 of the primetime games are spectacular this week. But yeah, I got the Eagles just off talent. I talked about it. This team is going to be really good this year. So yeah, give me the Eagles.
All right, then we're going down to the Sunday slate. Our first one we have is Pittsburgh at Falcons. Falcons, the home team. I'm rocking with the Falcons. Interesting to see, though, the leash Russell Wilson will have, depending how he starts off.
Yeah.
I mean, best backup in the league right now, technically backup, although Mike Tomlin already came out and said expect Justin Field packages.
Well, I was just going to say that. I thought I saw that, and I'm curious to see what that looks like. Do they bring him in for some different looks, some read options, maybe occasional gadget play where he's in the backfield?
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, the possibilities are endless, but yeah, I give me the Falcons just off talent.
Then we have Arizona at Buffalo. This is one of the easier picks for me for this week. Buffalo, especially at home. I mean, just miles better than the Cardinals right now.
Easily.
I'm now seeing, I forgot to put my sticker on this one, but we have Tennessee at Chicago. I'm actually taking Chicago in this one as well. I think it's one of those games where I'm just going to take the home team either way.
Weird game.
Just a weird game. A good start, though, for Caleb Williams to get a team like the Titans for his first start at home as well. So I'm going to rock with the Bears for that one. You're obviously in agreement. We'll keep going here. New England at Cincinnati. What more do we really need to say there?
What's the spread on that? Is that the highest one of the week?
We'll see. The spread for that one is 9 points, which is the highest of the week. Yes, there you go, Ben. Yeah. Good call. Good call.
There's a reason Vegas does this. They have too much money on the line. There's a reason it's the highest spread of the week. This game shouldn't be close.
Houston at Indianapolis, a week 1 game that could have actually pretty important implications in terms of tiebreakers and stuff. I mean, this is a big game for both these teams right out of the gate. This one was a tough one for me. I was really tempted to go Colts, but I'm going to go with the Texans. I like their weapons more. I don't know. I feel like week 1, you just got to go with who you think the better team is. And as the season progresses, you can kind of go for
maybe a couple home upsets.
Yeah, but I think week 1, you just kind of go chalk with who you think's the better team. And we talk about we both think the Texans are better than the Colts.
Yeah, this was a coin flip game for me. I like you said, I would not be surprised if Indianapolis wins this. I mean, that's the whole division. We talked about how close these teams are. Houston just has a slightly better team, maybe a little bit of, continuity as we talked about. That's about it.
Jacksonville at Miami. I'll tell you, both our teams have some challenging week 1 matchups. This is another one that I think is going to be very close, a very entertaining game.
Yeah, I feel good about it, but not 100% by any means.
Yeah, I'm going with Miami. I mean, not to be a dead horse, but I mean, I just think they're the better team. I said week 1, it's kind of hard to give a true analysis.
The Dolphins at home in September usually means good things, at least in this McDaniel era. Everyone's healthy. Should be what it is. I think the Jags are going to keep it close for a little bit, but I think that, like we talked about, that it's going to be hot there. The Dolphins are built for this. Yeah.
Next up, the game of the week, the Panthers at the Saints. Everyone can't wait to see this.
Wow.
I'm kidding. I got the Saints win this one, but I could really care less who wins this game, but give me the Saints, I guess. But kind of room for the Panthers to pull off the upset, not going to lie.
I'm rooting for the Panthers, but I'm taking the home team. That's literally the only reason why. I guess
lots of home cooking this week.
Yeah.
We see.
Yeah.
But we do have a road team here, the Vikings over the Giants. We both agree on this one as well. And I'll tell you what, say what you want. Sam Darnold, historically, except for his Jets year, has started off the season good. People forget his with those Panthers.
He was like 5-0, yeah.
Started off 5-0. He was getting the Vanilla Vic nickname for a little bit. I think he's going to have another hot start to the season. I think he's actually going to do very well against this Giants defense. I think people are going to overreact to it week 1 and think Sam Darnold's going to be some really above average quarterback. That's not going to happen. I'll tell you what, you're hearing it here first. Sam Darnold's having a game week 1.
Sure. For me, it had everything to do with just how bad this Giants team is right now. And maybe they get better throughout the season. But this Giants team, I don't even see a lick of hope in this team. That's what it comes down to for me.
Our first disagreement in our next one in Vegas versus Chargers. I think it's just kind of in line with our predictions for the division. I think this game is going to be a dogfight. I think it's going to be close. We kind of talk about where you think the Raiders are slightly better than the Chargers. I think the Chargers are slightly better than the Raiders. And that's pretty much what this one comes down to. I mean, Chargers are at home.
It's a good matchup.
I mean, Chargers are at home, so is it really a home field advantage? There might be more Raiders. There probably will be more Raiders fans there.
Yeah.
So, I mean.
It's a fun matchup.
Yeah, should be a fun matchup. Broncos at Seattle is the next one. I'm going with Seattle. Again, this one's kind of more of a boring matchup for me. I'm not really
looking for
excited.
Much. Yeah, I'll keep it on red zone.
Cowboys at Browns. This one's a really fun one. I'm actually surprised we're in disagreement. I'm taking the Cowboys, who are actually the underdog in this game. Cleveland, a 2.5-point favorite. I just think the Dallas star power is going to propel them to victory. And again, I just have a lot of question marks about Deshaun Watson.
I think this Cleveland fan base is riled up this year, and I think they think that this could be a big year for them. And I think they're going to show up early, first game of the season. That stadium's going to be loud. The defense is going to kind of carry the load against this Dallas team that I think needs to figure some things out on offense before. I mean, CeeDee Lamb might be rusty. He hasn't necessarily been there all the time in practice, so I think those holes might show. But this was a close game. I could have picked this either way.
Washington at Tampa Bay. We're both rocking with the Bucs in this one. I just think it's going to take Jan Daniels a couple weeks to kind of get under his feet.
This will be a good game, though.
I think the Bucs are just a bit more well-oiled machine. They don't need to do to win football games. Commanders, a lot of new changing parts. Wouldn't shock me if the Commanders win this game.
No,
but I'm kind of just going to go with what I think the slightly better team is. I'll take Tampa Bay at home.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited to watch this game. It's not a game that when you first looked at it a couple months ago, this would be kind of an exciting game. But I'm excited to see Jaden Daniels play, and this Bucs team is still fun to watch.
And I'll tell you what, other than the kickoff games and my personal team, this is my favorite game on the Sunday slate.
Rematch of that excellent divisional game.
Rams against the divisional game. Oh, the divisional playoff. Okay,
yes.
okay.
Yep.
Rams at Detroit. We disagree on this one. I'll tell you what, I'm high on those Rams this year. And for some reason, I think Detroit's the first year they have expectations. Are the lights too bright? Can they replicate last year's success?
Well, you seem to think they are too bright.
I don't know. I think they're just going to get a little punch in the jaw from the Rams and just remind them that, hey, you still got to have your work cut out for you. Give me the Rams, but I'll tell you what, I think it's going to be a fun game. I think it's going to be a pretty high scoring game as well.
Oh, I think this might be a shootout. You see a lot of times early in the season, these defenses get kind of exposed early, and then they kind of figure it out. I think both these offenses are high powered, and it's going to be which quarterback kind of performs better. And last time those two quarterbacks went head-to-head, Jared Goff had the edge. And I think that's what it's going to come down to for me. But I would not be surprised. We talked about this. Rams team is no joke. So if the Lions start slow, things could get ugly for the Lions.
And then the Jets starting their season on Monday Night Football in back-to-back years.
I forgot to mark this one down.
That's all right. We both forgot one. It's the Jets at the 49ers. My first question for you is, will Aaron Rodgers play more than 3 snaps?
4 snaps.
Or 4 snaps. Yeah, sorry, 4 snaps. I forgot.
One snap.
I forgot a 25% target share of all his snaps.
Yeah,
oh, man.
There you go.
All jokes aside, I'm rocking with the 49ers in this one. However, it might be close. I don't know. I just don't know. I have no idea what the Jets are. I don't know, but I do know that the 49ers are the favorites in the NFC, and I think you'd be crazy to go against them.
Niners by 20 in this game. I think this game's going to be a blowout. I think the Jets just aren't there yet. I think that these problems that we're hearing are more than what Jets fans want to admit. And I think this Niners team is just they're darn good. And then I think they're going to kind of make a statement early. Will they slow down at some point in the season? Probably. But I think this Niners team is only going to get, they're going to show out early.
You hear here first, the Jets getting exposed week 1. I'll tell you what, if the Jets get blown out week 1, it is going to be a media dumpster fire. I'll tell you that.
With the Giants, man, will that New York media eat them alive?
Well, that's going to do it for the first episode back at the bottom line. I'll tell you what, it's been a long time coming, but it feels so good to be back. Chatting up with my main man. We're going to be back once a week, maybe even more with,
we'll see how school goes.
Same slate next week. Once a week minimum, we'll be back for the week 1 recap, week 2, and who knows what else. But he's been Willey. You got anything else you got to say before I wrap it up?
Not really. Excited to watch some football.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I mean,
you got it. You guys, you said every show, go out, watch some football. Enjoy it. That's always good too. But that's gonna do it for episode 1 of the Bottom Line. He's Ben Willey. I'm JD Dorazio. We'll catch you guys next time.